The information provided on this podcast is for general informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. Reliance on any information provided here is solely at your own risk. Welcome to the Birth Baby Podcast. Each week, you'll find guidance, encouragement, and practical tools to support you through pregnancy, birth, and the postpartum journey. I'm your host, Ciarra Morgan, a certified birth and postpartum doula, hypnobirthing educator, and pediatric sleep consultant. I'm also the owner of a doula agency in Austin, Texas, and the founder of the Birth Baby Academy, where I offer classes for both parents and birth professionals. Thanks for being here. Hello, everyone. Today we are here for one of y'all's favorites. It's a birth story. And I have Evelyn Houder with me, and she is here. She lived in LA, y'all, and San Francisco, and she was a dancer and an actor and on-camera talent. And now she's just a mom. No, I'm just kidding. Now she proudly boasts the title of dance mom to her firstborn. She has 3 kiddos, and she's here today to tell us a little bit about each of her birth stories. This is going to be a 2-parter, so buckle up. And we are going to first chat about her journey of getting pregnant and her first birth. So thank you so much for being here today, Evelyn.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's great. So fun.
Yeah, I'm going to make people wait for episode 2 to kind of hear about our connection and why we're talking today. But can you start by just telling us a little bit about your journey to getting pregnant and your first pregnancy, nine-ish years ago now?
Yeah, almost. Yeah, I guess so. Math is hard for me. No,
yeah, don't math. We don't have to do that today.
No. Yeah, it was quite a journey. So, I struggled to get pregnant initially. I knew I wanted to have babies right off the bat. I knew I wanted babies before I even knew I wanted to get married. I was like, let's do this. We had a lot of trouble getting pregnant, and I had a loss, and the loss got me into that like fear state, that like, oh, it's never going to happen. I'm never going to have kids. And I probably jumped into IVF a little too fast. But when you're in that place, you feel like
you're desperate.
You're desperate. Yeah, you're desperate. So we jumped right in. We did IVF. And we were one of the super fortunate ones. We did have we had a few complications leading up to the IVF, but to cut to the chase, first try on IVF, which is almost unheard of, we got pregnant, and that was Avery. That was our eldest. So we had a pretty seamless pregnancy, all things considered. We had done IVF and we were keeping track of it, but I was super healthy. I was working a ton, working super long hours, feeling good, and living in the Bay Area. I think that's important to note, because I was already, I kind of teeter on the crunchy, but not crunchy side of things, and I knew I had friends who had done home births. I had lots of friends in the Bay Area who had done hospital births. That's definitely not the norm. At least in my circle of friends. And I started planning my birth, and I was looking at a birth center. I was thinking about home birth. I think at the time what happened is you basically live on top of each other. Anybody who's lived in San Francisco, you don't have privacy, even in your own home. You are right on top of other people. And I already started thinking like, oh, my neighbors are going to hear me.
You're all going to know.
All going to know. I wasn't one of those to really, I wasn't well researched on birth. I was well researched on IVF. I was well researched on getting pregnant. And then all of a sudden I was pregnant and I didn't know what to do, but I knew, okay, at my home is probably not going to be the best option for us. So we started looking for the next best thing. And we looked at birth centers. At the time I had somebody in my circle of friends who was an anesthesiologist, and she came to me and she was like, essentially told me it was a death sentence if I did anything other than go to the hospital. Oh. And everyone in my circle was of that mindset. My husband included, he grew up in the Midwest, and we do things one way. And I let that get to me, and I just kind of let that influence get to me. So I thought, okay, we'll meet in the middle. And we hired, actually, I don't know if it's still the case. At the time, it was the only male midwife definitely in California, maybe in the States. I don't know.
You're like,
I don't know.
ever?
But he was, yeah. But he was a
A
male
mid-husband?
midwife. But he, yeah. And then, you hear the term midwife because he worked in the hospital. He worked in a hospital setting, but he was a midwife. So all of his colleagues were OBs, but he was a midwife. So he was my care provider. What I thought was so cool about him was that he started his practice in 81, which was the year I was born. And I was like, he could have birthed me, but he didn't feel, like it felt like he had experience behind him. And I thought that would be a good path. Cut to getting closer and closer to having our daughter. And I just felt great. Everybody kept saying, oh, you're getting closer. You're going to have her soon. And I was like, no, I'm not. And I did not have the wisdom of a mom who's had 3 babies to really know for sure. But now looking back, my instincts were there, and my instincts were telling me she's not coming anytime soon. She's not ready to come. And the things I learned after that really, really informed this, that the mom knows. And, I was very healthy. I was, everything was going great. So we, we're getting closer and closer. I'm doing all the things. There's this really steep steps in San Francisco called the Line Street Steps. I'm walking those steps like multiple times a day. I mean, it's the kind of thing that would wind just your average person who's not
knowing
really...
what I know about you, this is not surprising. Like, it's not surprising to me. Like, did you also go try to run a marathon? No,
not quite. But, I was working like sometimes 14-hour days. I was working for Instagram. So I was getting on one of the Facebook Instagram buses in the city and going down to Menlo Park and working all day and working on like deadlines and intense, flying to LA for shoots. Like, I mean, I was doing all the things and super happy, loving it. I wasn't, I wasn't feeling uncomfortable or anything like that. But as we get closer and closer to my due date, I'm getting that fear put into me. Like, you're going to have to do something. You're going to have to do something. So basically what it came down to is, if I didn't agree to be induced, then they no longer would accept me as a patient. Like, they would rescind their care.
And was this a birthing center freestanding, or was this the hospital birthing center?
This is not either. It was the hospital. It's a midwife that works out of the hospital. How can they
decline care for you? Like, midwife?
The hospital can't decline care, but the doctor can say, I will no longer care for you. And then I'd just be with any doctor.
Whoever.
Right. And this particular hospital...
This is called medical coercion.
Exactly. Yes. Thank you. The hospital was called the baby factory for a reason. I mean, the majority of the women going to this hospital, no shame in this. If this is what feels good to you,
sure,
do it. This wasn't what felt good to me, but there was a lot of high profile, like power women that wanted to schedule C-sections and get back to the office on Monday, and that's great. That wasn't what I wanted for them. Yes. Right. Yeah. That wasn't what I wanted at all. So there's a lot of choices that I could have made differently that might have dictated my path or set me on a different direction. All things happen for a reason. And this is where I was coerced into an induction.
At how many weeks and days?
I was at 39 weeks and 5 days.
So not even to your due date.
No, but they do that for a reason, because they want to make sure you have the baby before that due date. Before that due date. No, you know what? Excuse me. I can't believe I'm forgetting this, but it may have been... No,
it's like a long time ago, friend. Like,
I'm serious. A long time ago. Yeah, it may have been they don't let you go past the 42 weeks mark.
Oh, okay.
But I don't think so. No, I don't think so. I don't think that's correct. It was 39 weeks.
You're like, when was your due date and when was she born, Wow, yes, that's crazy.
Exactly.
So baby factory behavior.
It's totally baby factory behavior. And, like you get in there and you realize what a baby factory it is, and you don't want to do things. And then you find yourself in situations where right away, immediately upon admittance to the hospital, we had a nurse that came to us, and very like Martha-esque from Handmaid's Tale kind of vibes that I was getting. And, told me that I needed to just be comfortable with the idea that I was probably going to have a C-section. I had not even begun the induction yet.
Wow.
And that's what was, I think you need to just accept that you're going to have a C-section.
Wow.
And those and I had a doula. I had a very strong, very, very opinionated, but also very willing to fight for her clients doula.
I love that you're saying that so much, because people oftentimes think that because they have a doula, they're going to get the outcome they want. Because I have a fighter doula, I have an advocate. And it's like, there's no way I can't be good enough at my job to outdo what they are telling you. I can't undo it.
And a large part of it is also psychological.
That's why. It doesn't matter how good I am. I can't change the course of what a doctor or a medical professional is telling you and how it impacts your psyche.
Not to mention that you can't possibly, as a doula, I understand this now, you can't be there at the start of the induction and still expect to be there for your client when they're birthing. So she wasn't there at the start and understandably at the time I felt a little bit like, where's Jen? But I get it now, and she needed to be rested to really be there for the intense part. And what she knew probably that I didn't, she probably didn't want to put these ideas in my head. My labor ended up being 48 hours, which is pretty common for a first-time mom induction. Yeah. But most moms that are first-time that's never been through it don't. I've found so many people that I say 48 hours and they think that's insane. They're like 2 days of labor. I'm like, no, that's actually kind of
slow going, friends. Yeah.
Yeah. That's how it goes.
Yeah.
And it felt like a torture chamber. At one point, I knew I wanted lots of kids. I knew that I want 3 feels like nothing. I really wanted a big family. At one point I remember bouncing on the ball, and it was early, but it wasn't that early in the process. It was early, you know what I mean? I looked over at my husband and I was like, can we please get a surrogate for the next one?
Oh, wow.
It was
you opt out.
Yeah. And if that's what the majority of women are experiencing, no wonder women have this idea that birth is this medical emergency, which I come from a standpoint of it's not a medical emergency. This is a normal biological experience that we have been doing since literally the dawn of time, and our bodies are made to do this. But that experience is not what our bodies are made to do. We're not meant to have a balloon stuffed up us and expanding our, none of that is supposed to happen. And I went through procedure after procedure after thing to try to get me to go into labor. We did Pitocin, and then the Pitocin caused the baby's heart rate to drop, all of these things that keep complicating the otherwise healthy birth, healthy baby.
That kind of cascade of interventions you hear about, you're like, oh, that happened for you.
Yes. One after another. We did the balloon, and then we did, and I remember I eventually hit a point where I was so sad about this, because not because I have passed any judgment on anybody else who's getting an epidural, but I did not want an epidural. I wanted to experience the birth, and I wanted to know, I wanted all of the natural endorphins to kick in, and I wanted all of those experiences. And I hit a point where it was like, I'm okay, let's do the epidural. And then I was able to sleep, which I think was positive. Being able to sleep,
game changer. It's a tool. An epidural is a tool.
Yes. And so that I will say was great. However, I remember being asked if I needed to push, and me being like, oh, is that what I'm supposed to do right now? Versus now I know. Nobody can tell you when you need to push. Know when you need to push, that feeling.
But you had that disconnect that you were hoping to have
completely disconnected. And I was like, yeah, I need to push. I didn't need to push. I just told them that because I think I wanted to do what they wanted me to do. I wanted to be a good patient, and this is after what felt like an eternity, but this is at the very end of a super, super long labor that I just felt like I was a failure. I remember feeling so defeated and feeling like all of these things. There's also, on the flip side, when you have these goals set to do a natural birth, sometimes it's just not in the cards. And I think us as moms being too hard on ourselves, if it doesn't work out, is also not beneficial, and that can also cause a cascade of issues, and I was so, so upset about giving in to these things. And, I don't know at what point I realized I really was able to look at it and realize that this caused the cascade of how it went down. But I just felt defeated.
And you didn't fail. The system failed you. That 100%. Is what happened, is the system failed you. And we don't know what we don't know. And we are at the mercy of the people who are like above us, quote unquote. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm quoting like, someone who is a person of authority in that realm, right? Like if it's the legal system, it's the attorneys and the police and whatever. If it's the medical system, it's the nurses, the doctors, the midwives, whoever. There's always going to be somebody that knows more than us. Just like in our professions, we're the ones who know more than majority of the other people. So you can't, people can't fault themselves for the things that they agreed to or whatever, because you don't know what you don't know, and you trust the people that are caring for you. And unfortunately, they don't always have your best. A lot of times it is provider preference over medical necessity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that can feel very discouraging, especially when I remember thinking, if only I had some kind of medical background so that I would have some kind of respect. It wasn't even about knowledge, because I did feel at that point, I felt like I was going into it very informed. I felt like I knew enough. But I remember thinking, if only I had that pedigree to be given the right respect that's needed, to be given that.
Oh, it's frustrating.
Oh, it is. But I also, I have a respect for, I had so many amazing nurses also. I had, so it's not all bad, but it's just the ones that do manipulate and try to force their will upon your body. Like they can't, it's not possible, but when you try to make it possible, bad things happen. That's was my experience. So we were pushing, and it just wasn't working. And I'm pushing and I'm pushing. I was out of my mind, definitely, because I remember the doctor coming in and telling me the amount of time I'd been pushing. And I was like, it hasn't been that. I thought it had been 2 minutes, and it had been a significant amount of time that I'd been pushing, like 2 hours maybe, or some, it had been a good amount of time that I'd been pushing. And it got to the point where I was told, you have two choices. You can continue to push for a specific amount of time. And if the baby doesn't come out by then, it will be an emergency, which means your doula will not be able to be in the room. Your husband will not be able to be in the room, and it will be a full-fledged emergency. If you choose to go in now, it will not be considered an emergency. We will have the time to prep them, and you'll still have a C-section, but you'll have your support system in the room. I looked around, and I think at that point I couldn't even make decisions for myself. Like it was like, I just looked around, and I remember looking at my doula even more than my husband, and just being like, I think that's what I should do. And I felt stuck. It felt like being, to me, it kind of felt like
choice
prison.
Is that?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's also not true. That's the part that's so frustrating as the doula. I'm like, I've had many a mom push for 4 hours and have a baby. And yes, I've also had moms push and then it does end up in an emergency C-section, but that can happen after 10 minutes or 4 hours. It's not necessarily a time. And they put this arbitrary time clock on things, which all of us know doesn't work. Like there's no magic formula. But if you hear that in your mom ears, you're like, well, yeah, sign me up for the thing that I get my support system then.
Exactly. Well, also I knew that I didn't want my baby being left alone. This is the end of 2017. This is December 2017. The world wasn't as intense as like 2020, but especially in California, there were a lot of things that were happening in hospitals with babies that I did not want going down with my family, and I was already on defense. Like I was already thinking alert. Like what exactly? I was just like, so I wanted my husband in that room, because if I'm cut open and then my baby comes out, who is with my baby? A stranger? That did not feel right to me. Just instinctually, that just didn't feel right to me. So I chose, let's go in for the C-section. To this day, I've thought about this a lot, and I think it's important. I'm happy to talk about it here because I think it's important. I think a lot of moms go through these thoughts, but I remember being wheeled down the hallway. And I still don't know if it was being wheeled into surgery or out of surgery. I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure it was being wheeled into surgery. And I remember feeling this so angry, but I was angry at the baby. And it was like, you're not in your right mind. You have all these drugs pumping through you. And I was angry at the baby. Like, how could she do this to me? How could you? I've worked so hard. And, and then feeling guilt. Like, what kind of mother am I? I haven't even met my baby and I'm angry with her, and going through this whole, and then it's like, you're in a altered state because you have drugs going through your system. So, the fact that it wasn't really weighing on me in the moment, but for a very long time afterwards, until I really fleshed it out, I had so much guilt about those emotions being a part of our birth experience. That birth experience that you want to be pure and filled with love. And then I had this like anger feeling, and it wasn't her fault. She was being forced to do something that she wasn't ready to do. She was supposed to be the one that dictates when she comes out, and everybody else was dictating it, And
and I have moms I've had moms that have told me about feeling this way before an epidural, before a labor, even about a breech baby, a baby that's not well positioned or in a position to where like, I don't have support to have a breech vaginal birth. And now I'm going to have to go in for a C-section, and they're having this like same anger. But it's funny because we have to place the anger somewhere. Just like when you stub your toe, like you want to be mad at somebody, like who put that there, But like it's just like our human nature to want to blame somebody. And it's hard to blame the people who were quote unquote in charge, because you're like, but they knew, like they were just doing the things we're supposed to be doing. So you're like, okay, well, I'll blame the baby. Or like, it's hard to blame, well, why isn't the hospital system letting me have a vaginal breech birth then? That should be something we're doing. It's just easier to be mad at the baby,
Well, and also that hospital system is what creates the friction to make us feel like there's something wrong when we're in a breech birth. Because there are things we can do for a breech birth. Yes. There are things we can do, in Avery's circumstances, so much of it is unknown because of the way it went down. But I, at the core of my heart, believe two things about her birth that, I'll get to how there's more, but I believe that I wouldn't have become so strong in my convictions about birth had I not experienced her birth. So it's like kind of everything happens for a reason, but I also believe that her birth went so terribly wrong because of the hospital system and being coerced into things. Like she just wasn't ready to come out. And that's at the end of the day, she was a healthy baby. She was a strong baby. She was not ready to come out. And to this day, she's a stubborn little one. So,
don't tell me what to do.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So we got into the operation room and we're going to do the C-section. And I said, I don't want to be under completely. I want to be, because they gave me the option to just knock me out. And I was like, no, I want to be present, but I was really scared. The idea of being cut open was terrifying. And so I wanted the curtain up, essentially, that they put separating your head from your lower half. And I was very clear. I don't want to see anything of me being cut open because I'm really, really anxious about this. I don't know how this was never flagged before me because this was a well-established hospital, but they have ring lights on the ceilings that are framed by a metal frame.
That's reflective.
That's reflective.
Oh my God.
So the exact position you're in when you're laying on the table, you can see your entire everything cut open.
Oh my gosh.
So
I've been in a lot of C-sections. I guess I've never looked up. I'm looking up next time.
Look up. Yeah, look up. Or, I imagine it's something where maybe those tables move, right? So maybe my table
or the angle,
that day,
because our blue sheet is usually so close to mom's face, like she really can't see much at all. And we're sitting right there. But it would make sense if that was angled even a little bit, wow.
I got the magic
crazy,
angle.
Evelyn.
So I could see everything. And they cut me open and then like, there's no baby coming out, and you've never done this before. So you're like, well, what is this normal? I remember I was holding my doula's hand on one hand and my husband's hand on the other. And I remember I just kept looking up at her and saying, is this normal? Is this normal? Because things didn't feel normal. And at the same time, you're cut open, like that's not normal in my opinion.
Right.
None of it is normal, but
yeah,
in context of a cesarean, is this normal?
right.
And she wouldn't answer me. Like I couldn't get an answer out of her, which I knew wasn't a good sign. She was doing this isn't a statement on her either. She was doing exactly what I think any skilled birth worker would do, is like trying to keep me positive and not let me freak out more than I already
You're in good hands. Yeah.
Exactly. All of those things. And then the next thing they told me, they didn't tell me what was going on. They just said, okay, you're going to feel, I heard them talking about who was going to do it, and somebody wasn't going to be strong enough, and they needed somebody who was strong enough. Obviously my male midwife was not the one who was doing my cesarean. He can't do that. So there was one of the doctors that worked with him. But I heard them talking, and it was like she wasn't strong enough or something like that. And I really didn't understand what was going on. It was very, very confusing and very scary. And they just said, you're going to feel a lot of pressure. Don't worry, you're not going to feel pain, but you will feel pressure. And the next thing I felt was the only way I can describe it. I mean, it's kind of gory, but it felt like having my guts ripped out of me, but without the pain. But that the pressure was none other. She was so stuck that when they cut me open for the cesarean, they couldn't pull her out of my stomach. So they had to go in vaginally. So my midwife had to come in and push her out through my stomach, but they had to go in vaginally and kind of push her back up.
Yep. Sometimes the head is so engaged in the pelvis already, or like a little bit cattywampus. I know that's not a technical term. And they're kind of like pushing the baby up higher because it's so wedged in the pelvis.
Yes. Yes. So that was, they got her out.
Was happening?
I couldn't hear her crying, but everyone else was saying, wow, this kid has some strong lungs. She's healthy. Everybody's happy. Baby's healthy. And I can feel myself getting super, super cold, like super cold. And then I'm shaking, which that can happen, and they, at a certain point that they brought her to me, and, that she's just like right here. And I just was terrified. I wanted her off me. I felt like something was like, I didn't feel right in my body. And I remember looking at my husband and being like, can you take her? Like I was able to meet her and say hello. And then I felt like I wasn't capable of holding her, but I wasn't in my right mind either. So I didn't have the mental fortitude to recognize like, you're not supposed to be able to hold her. Other people are there, but I just knew something was wrong. And they got her off me. And at that point, I think is when it became clear to me. I don't know when it was clear to everybody else, but I was losing and had lost a lot of blood.
Yeah.
So we went through, then it was getting that handled, which, at that point, my recollection of things is not super straightforward. It's just kind of, everything. I'm here. So that's what we know. Like, I got here. We ended up having to stay in the hospital for about a week after that, not for her, but for me. And I'll tell you what, staying in a hospital for a week with your new baby and your first, like, it felt like an insane asylum by the time we were leaving. I also didn't want nurses taking my baby. I didn't want her going to the nursery. I didn't want any of those things. So it felt like I constantly had to sort of
fight or flight.
Yeah.
The whole time.
Well, you're in fight or flight, and you genuinely are fighting because nurses are coming in and they're wanting to do things. They're wanting to, whatever it is that they're pushing. And I'm having to find that delicate balance of strength, but enough kindness so that I don't piss people off so bad that they do it anyways. And just kind of like,
I do that all the time as a doula. I call it killing them with kindness, but really I'm not being nice under here sometimes.
It is taxing. It's horrible. It's not a good feeling. You don't feel safe. You don't feel like that's not a place you want to be. I don't know where, but essentially she was great. She had no health complications whatsoever. She was gaining weight. We were able to breastfeed. That was the positive in all of that.
Good, yeah.
Is that she latched immediately. We had, I had some like my nipple split and all of those things, but like she did great. And then it was just me recovering.
Yeah.
And having to get through all of that, which I don't think enough people talk about when you have gone through a C-section, what that recovery is like. Everybody acts like, well, not everybody. A lot of people act like getting a C-section is like this easy out kind of thing. And
Oh, no.
now that I've done both, I'm like, I would much rather have a vaginal birth than a cesarean. I mean, the recovery for that alone was wild.
I had a mom say that to me the other day, actually. She had just had a very long vaginal birth that was very hard. And she goes, man, I guess signing up for a C-section would be a lot easier than this because that was a lot. And I was like, yeah, but your recovery is going to be real simple. And that's a big deal. Like I felt very protective of C-section moms in that moment, especially C-section moms who labor and even push. And then we have a C-section because it's a double whammy.
Yep. You're recovering in two different places and emotionally.
And the exhaustion. Yeah. Like the extra layer of exhaustion that's accompanied with that.
Well, and I also noticed blood loss.
That's an extra one. Did you have to get a transfusion?
They tried and I pushed back on it. Back on it. They gave me supplements and they said, well, we'll wait and see. And I was able to avoid getting the blood transfusion, which I was super, super happy about. But I also noticed after the fact, there's a thing that happens with new moms where it almost felt like a competition over whose birth had been most traumatic. And you'd be sharing your story in a sharing way. And then there was like this one-upping of, oh, well, mine, this happened. And then and it felt so ick to me. You know, like it just felt like that shouldn't be what we're competing over, is who had the most traumatic experience and that's not something to brag about. But with our culture and the way it works, it's kind of becoming this rite of passage. Well, if you had the most traumatic birth, and then we're in turn proving the system right, that we need them because births are really scary. And let me tell you why, because here's the scary thing that happened to me.
And misery loves company.
Yes.
So that's what's really sad to me, is that my moms that have a really beautiful birth experience feel like they can't really tell anybody because they're worried that it'll seem like bragging.
Oh,
but then when someone else, well, I don't either, but I feel like it's, gives people hope that it doesn't have to be so bad. But then what they notice is like, if they say something positive happened, other people just immediately say, yeah, well, my sister-in-law, or yeah, well, my best friend. Oh, well, yeah, well, I almost died during childbirth. And like, you got lucky is basically the mentality. And it's like, if we could flip that, and I don't think anybody should be ashamed of sharing their story, good or bad. But if we could flip it and help more people who had a positive experience, we would start realizing like, oh, not everybody is induced before their due date.
Yeah.
Oh, not everybody has a doctor telling them they only have so much time to push. Oh, if we had shared more of that, then we would normalize the normal.
Well, and all the people that aren't sharing their positive story, then all we're hearing is those negative stories.
Exactly.
And then we have doctors telling us, oh, it's super, exactly. And we don't realize how many people have these beautiful births, but there's not the trauma. Also trauma, you work through trauma by telling the story of it.
Sure.
That's how you process it. So there's more need to process that trauma than there is to process this beautiful experience you had. You share it when the time is right, but you're not like oozing the need to share this because it's just your beautiful moment. Right. Yeah. And fortunately, I've been able to experience both, but I did notice after the fact how much of that there was that I backed away from telling my story because I didn't want to participate in this one-upping. And I also think that depending on your own personal skew, I could say that I almost died in childbirth.
Sure.
I lost blood. I could make my story be a lot more traumatic. Yes, it felt traumatic in a sense, but it also, I was in a hospital and in the end I was fine. It was scary. I think it was really scary for my husband, but I ended up okay. And that's what I walk away with is that I ended up okay. But if I wanted to skew my story as a reason why women should always be in a hospital, oh, well, look at me. If I hadn't been in the hospital, I would have bled to death. Well, I was bleeding because I was in a cut open. I was cut open because of interventions, and I was in interventions because I was coerced to be there before my body was ready.
Yeah.
So you can skew it however you want to skew it, right? Mm-hmm. And then you get to the recovery piece, which is very hard. I was really fortunate to have the financial backing, to have support, to pay our doula. We didn't intend to have night doulas. We had night doulas 3 days a week to help me get out of bed so I could breastfeed the baby. I couldn't physically get out of bed. My husband had to go right back to work. The job he had at the time, he didn't have any leave. So I physically couldn't get out of the bed. At first, she was bringing the baby to me, and it was like, if I hadn't had, I was privileged in that instance. If I hadn't had that, there's a million other complications that I imagine could have happened that I was able to avoid. And I recognize all of the fortune that I had, the good fortune that I had in my position in life, but it's just not the way it should be, and it feels backwards. I had an instance in our recovery even where my male midwife, I told him, I have this bump, and it was like near my incision line, but it wasn't even on my incision line. And I said, this doesn't feel normal. This just doesn't feel normal. And I wanted him to feel it. And he said, it's just an ingrown hair. Don't worry about it. It's just an ingrown hair. And I was like, this is not an ingrown hair. And he kind of brushed me aside, and, I leave the office and I wait. And I mean, getting to the office alone is a whole other thing I could get to. With you're recovering, you're a new mom, you're recovering, you've got to drive and park and get the stroller out, and you're
that
lifting.
Feels like a marathon.
You're not supposed to lift more than however many pounds, but if you have got the car seat and the baby, you're already breaking that rule. And there's all these things that just immediately conflict with one another. But anyways, I leave the office. I said, okay, not just one, but 2 of my staples that were inside staples that were supposed to dissolve in my body, not only pushed out of my body, but didn't even push out on the incision line. They pushed out through other parts of my stomach. And I brought them to his office. I took a picture and I brought them to him. And I said, I was like, is this the ingrown hair that you were talking about? And how would I have gotten this? Like, I didn't steal it from the operating room, right? I
would have been videoing it coming out of my stomach.
Pushed out through my body.
Evelyn.
Mm-hmm. But, that's not possible. It can't possibly be. Because I was concerned. I was like, is this part of the surgery? Is this part of something? No, just, brushed aside. Thank God it wasn't something that was going to cause me serious harm. It just was this quirky medical thing, and I was fine. But that happens so often too. And I hear stories about things like this happening, and I believe it because I watched it happen with me. And I think the tricky part is you develop a trust and relationship with the people that you're trusting to help you bring your baby into this world. And then when they treat you like that, it feels so much more painful. It feels like somebody close to you in a way. And I think sometimes, without care providers even realizing it, they just look at you. They don't look at you as like a human anymore. They just look at you as like another number coming in the door,
It's crazy. I even see this happen with moms having out of hospital births. I have midwives that will tell a client, like, no, I don't think it's quite time for you to come in yet, like to the birthing center. Wait until this. And then I'm there, and this just happened to me last week. I'm there and I hear them say that. And they get off the phone and the mom's like, I really feel like we have a 30-minute drive to the birthing center. I really feel like maybe we should go. And I say, I trust you. And they're like, well, she just said, don't come in. And I was like, she's not the boss of your body. Like, if we need to go, we need to go. I always listen to their intuition. We should listen to women. Yeah. And especially when it's about their own effing bodies, or the bodies that came out of their bodies, so that we can help our children, and we get pushed aside so often, and they try to make our intuition go away, like, so that we don't think for ourselves, and don't worry, someone else will tell you how to do it. And other women do it to other women. It's just like this cadence and this culture, even with midwifery, because that was a male midwife.
Yeah. Well, and also even with, even in the home birth setting, these kind of things can happen. I think they're less likely to happen.
For part 2.
Yeah. but it can happen anywhere. I think it's interesting how I'm curious about this, and you might have more real world knowledge to tell me, but I'm curious if the people, the women who have followed the rules and been a good student and done things the right way, I wonder if they're the ones that don't listen to their intuition as well. Because I feel like I experienced this. I wanted to be good. I wanted to be good, even though I knew how I felt and I knew what I believed in. And I can be very strong and convicted in certain situations, but I want to be agreeable if possible. And I noticed that impacted all of my births in some capacity, actually.
I actually have an episode coming up. I haven't recorded it yet, but it's with someone, and we talk about advocating for ourselves and our children in life, and like why some of us can't do it or aren't as good at it. And so I'm actually having that conversation because it is interesting, especially within the medical field, how we want our doctor to like us. It's like because we're so vulnerable in their hands that we're worried if we speak up or talk back that maybe they're going to withhold care from us for something, or maybe we'll get, we won't get the care that we need. And it's this really interesting dynamic. And it does happen. So I'm just glad that you listened to yourself and that you paid attention to that part in your body. And you're right. Thank God that it wasn't something that, we have this happen when we're like, I don't feel good. I have a headache and my head's spinning. And they're like, oh no, you're probably just lightheaded and you need to eat something. Really? Or is it preeclampsia and your blood pressure is through the roof? And many women are just not listened to.
Well, I walked away from the experience and I knew right away, I said, the next time I'm going to do more me and less everybody else's opinions, because they just don't matter. Everybody else's opinions, that's too this or too that, or that's really out there. Had a lot of friends saying anyone who does a home birth, that's way too out there. Like they've gone off the deep end.
You're like, hi, I'm Evelyn and I'm out there.
Hi, I'm Evelyn and I'm in the deep end.
That's when you go to the social media clips right there. Hi, I'm Evelyn and I'm in the deep end.
I love it.
I love that so much. So anything else you want to tell us about your first experience before we give these people a sorry you don't get to listen to the rest of it today?
Yeah. No, at the end of the day, cheesy as it may be, everything happens for a reason. And this whole trajectory got me to where I am now and to where I went next, which was really beautiful and really validating and indicating just all of the things. So it is what it is. And here we are.
All right. I love it. Well, tune in next time for the rest of Evelyn's story. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to follow, rate, and review the podcast. It helps us reach more families who can benefit from this resource. For more resources, classes, and services, head to empoweredbeginningsatx.com or check out the Birth Baby Academy at birthbabyacademy.com. Until next time, wishing you confidence and calm on your journey through birth and beyond.